What's going on, everybody? It is Tyler, Coach, and Matt, the FF Mediators, and we are going to go through today the Dynasty tight end market, kind of walk through what we're seeing, what's going on, and I'm going to go ahead and just kick it to Tyler. He's going to lead us off.
Okay, so to start off first, I think we got to kind of evaluate where we're at in the season. Current top five tight ends. Now, this is in a half PPR format. Um, right now, sitting at number one, Dallas Goddard. After that big game last week, you know, that goes to show you where we stand in the tight end market, how bad scoring is currently. Um, Tight end two on the year, Kittle. Three, Kyle Pitts. Once again, he's got an extra game, so points are a little bit inflated there. Probably the most exciting person on this list for me personally is Brock Bowers. He's tied in four. And then actually sneaking in the top five is Cole Kmet. Now, notice these are just the tight end standings on the year. You notice any big names missing? There's Kelsey's not there. Mark Andrews isn't there. Um, you've got injured guys like Hawk and maybe Njoku, even Evan Ingram, who aren't there. Um, that's something that's played a huge role this year is injuries. It's everywhere, but especially at the tight end position. Um, Another thing to kind of look at the young guys that we touted that are supposed to be high ranking dynasty guys. Kincaid, McBride, uh, Laporta. You're looking, you got Kincaid at tight end 9, McBride at tight end 10, Laporta at tight end 18. I mean, tight end scoring's down as a whole this year. Um, Guys, what are you doing with these guys, especially the young ones? Are you trying to buy while the scoring is low?
Yeah, for me, if I can buy some of those younger guys like, Laporta, maybe even Kincaid. I know Coach isn't as high as Kincaid or McBride. I'm willing to do that. Of course, Bowers is going to be a little bit harder because I think everyone has realized that he truly is a generational prospect. He's looked really good so far this year. Laporta did have the injury a couple weeks ago. He didn't miss any time, just a few snaps during the game, not actual game time missed. But, you're not wrong. And the tight end landscape just looks different this year. And there's a number of reasons why. I'm not too worried about the big name tight ends at the top, but I'm more worried about the vets or the guys that are on their second contracts, like, you know, Mark Andrews. What do you do with Mark Andrews? So he's someone I've been trying to sell on teams that I do have him, and it's not worked very well at all.
Hey, look, you guys are missing the tight end, the best tight end of the bunch, Ferguson. He's been my boy. Look, if you sort it by games played, right, and the fantasy points scored per game, he's the top five tight end. He's fourth in targets of all tight ends, and he's played a fewer game than everybody else in the top 10. Two fewer games than Cade Otton, who's third in targets. I mean, Ferguson's a guy that's going to get the ball when he plays. He hasn't gotten the end zone yet, which has skewed his fantasy numbers so far, but they're throwing him the ball. He's getting targets and he's catching the football. He's a guy that, this is a prime time you could possibly go look to try to steal somebody like him.
Yeah, and you make a really good point. And all those targets he has, what'd you say? He's fifth right now among tight ends?
He's fourth in targets.
Fourth in targets. And I don't see that changing. He's an integral part of this offense. He's needed. Outside of CD Lamb, he's competing with Brandon Cooks, who's been injured, Jalen Tolbert, and Flournoy, who I know someone Coach liked as a developmental guy, but it's not established players. Ferguson is an established player. And my question to you, Coach, would be, what are you paying for Ferguson if you do go get him? Are you looking to,
So,
spend that early second?
so when you look at it, Ferguson's had 23 targets. He's fourth. The guy above him, who's third, has 24 targets. That's Brock Bowers, who's played in a full extra game. The guy right beneath him tied with him, also has 23 targets, is Kyle Pitts, who's played 2 extra games than Ferguson. Ferguson's at least worth a second round pick to me, for
Yeah.
instance.
What about you, Tyler? Is there a certain tight end that you're trying to acquire or that you're trying to move?
So right now, I mean, I think it kind of depends on where you're at, what your team looks like. And that's kind of the question I was going to turn back around to you here in a second. If I'm looking for a tight end right now, I think it's got to be somebody like Ferguson, somebody, like I think Bauer's price is probably a little too high now, but somebody that's going to get you a consistent amount of points on a weekly basis. We're not talking about game breakers here. You're not going to have, you know, the old Kelsey weeks. Those seem to be few and very far in between at this point. Um, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Are you going and you paying for the young tight ends, hoping they develop and they become that Kelsey? Or do you just sell off the tight ends that you have that are worth anything? And then once you start competing, go and try to buy that tight end, consistent tight end later.
Man, it's really tough because once someone does find a tight end, they typically don't want to get rid of him. So you kind of got to ride that line of knowing when to buy and when to sell. We've mentioned before TJ Hawkinson's a good buy for rebuilds just because he's injured. So teams aren't thinking about him right now. If I'm a contender, there's a decent chance in a lot of leagues I've been in where George Kittle's available. And that's somebody that I would take for the stability and the role in the offense. I mean, there's been all sorts of injuries in San Francisco. So his opportunity is there. Another name that I kind of want to hear coach speak on and what we've seen in Jacksonville. What are we doing with Evan Ingram? I mean, he's been injured, so he hasn't got to play. Um, I have him all over the place just because I truly believed he was going to be a difference maker. And unfortunately, he's not right now. He's hurting our teams.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that if you have Evan Ingram, you almost got to pray that he plays well, and then see if you can get off of him. Or he could come on late. I mean, that's a guy that could come on late too. I mean, but you're kind of stuck with him right now. You can just hope it works out. Another guy, like I was going to ask too, is like, what do you do? You mentioned Mark Andrews. So if I'm a competing team, I'm going to ask Tyler this: if I'm a competing team, do I go to Matt, say, who's a Mark Andrews owner, and do I offer him a third round pick for Mark Andrews? And I
Ooh,
just hope, well, maybe it comes around later. Is
I
that where
think
we're at?
I think you can try and offer it. I think I'll speak for Matt. I think in most people, they're probably not going to take that because they know that the weight that Mark Andrews' name carries. Um, that's a tough price to be paying for somebody who was as big as Andrews a few years ago. I think really your best bet for buying Andrews is if you probably already have Likely. Honestly, at that point, you've got one of the Ravens tight ends. After that, if you're hoping and like praying that Mark Andrews comes back, I don't know that he's worth the buy right now.
So
yeah,
what if your team's not? What if your team's not very good and you hold Mark and you have Mark Andrews? Then what are you going to do?
I
man.
mean,
If I'm in that situation, I'm a little sad first, but I'm trying to get a second. I think market value is probably somewhere around a late second, maybe a mid second. Name value, of course, you want more, but I don't think you're going to get it. It's not unsimilar to what we are seeing with Tua right now, where his value is all over the place because so much of it is risk and fear. Obviously, it's a different risk than what Tua has, and to Tyler's point, if I'm the likely manager, personally, I sold any opportunity I had of likely because I truly believe week one is going to be his best game of the season. And, a lot of people in redraft leagues went and dropped a ton of fab on him, and now they're dropping him because he hasn't been helpful for your team. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how we turn from where everyone thought this was going to be the year of tight ends to now we're kind of looking at, well, maybe we're going to have to wait for some of these young guys to develop. So I want to throw a couple names out there at you guys and hear if you guys have any, conviction or thoughts on these people. And we've got Tucker Kraft, we've got Pat Fryermuth, we've got Eric All, Ben Sinnott, Jatavion Sanders, or, maybe Luke Musgrave. Do any of those names intrigue you?
I think for
I
me,
mean,
go
go
ahead.
ahead,
Go.
Tyler. I mean,
Tyler,
maybe slightly, maybe
Yeah.
slightly. Like, maybe Eric All has came up a little bit. I'm willing to look at a guy like that. Jatavion Sanders has been disappointing. Theo Johnson, Tucker Kraft, those guys have been I don't know, man. Ben Sinnett's been really disappointing at this point. I don't know. I mean, it's been an extremely volatile tight end market, to say the least, and nobody really knows what to do with that position, and it's difficult. And with everybody, you're going to have to make some difficult decisions there for sure. For instance, I'm not paying a second for Mark Andrews. Like I'm just not the way he's looked so far. So I mean, heck, I don't. It's a tough decision.
I think out of that list that Matt was mentioning, I think the only one that I might consider a buy is maybe Pat Fryermuth. I view him in the same light as Coach kind of does Jake Ferguson. He may not have as many targets, but I think he's the second target on that offense. I don't think anybody besides Pickens in the wide receiver room is really going to challenge him for that.
And I feel like if I'm a dynasty team and let's say I'm contending and I do have Mark Andrews and I've got nobody behind him, and you're kind of searching for, well, I can't afford another goose egg. He's had two in a row. Will he have three in a row? To be determined. But, let's say he does and you need another name. Here's a really cheap name that I have been really monitoring, and that's Noah Fant. He doesn't cost anything, and he's in a passing offense, which is probably going to surprise most people. Up until last night, Geno Smith was leading the league in passing. So they're moving the ball around, and I think, Noah Fant, he's not going to win you weeks. He's not going to, probably score more than 15 points, but a few times. But he's probably someone who's not going to goose egg you very often, and that's valuable right now given the landscape of tight ends and what we're dealing with. I mean, just looking at his game log here, he had 9 points 2 weeks ago. He had 3.6 last week, so it's not as great, but he didn't get to play a lot of the snaps. So it's a name I'm monitoring just because he's still only 26 years old. And we've known that the tight end position takes time to develop. And, Tyler Lockett's phasing out. How long will DK be there? I don't know. That's the landscape we're dealing with of just trying to find somebody to score a point. And that's really sad.
Sorry, I said who would have thought that four games in, Tyler Conklin would have as many targets as Dalton Kincaid and four more targets than Sam Laporta. That's
It's
where we're at.
it's crazy. Another name that a lot of people were buying in the offseason, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, Coach. I know you've got a couple shares. What about Greg Dulcich?
Yeah, I mean that's another guy that's been really disappointing. I was hoping to get a little bit from him. He's got 12 targets in 4 games. It's just, I don't.
Mhm.
It's been really disappointing to say the least.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, let's wrap up here. Is there a tight end out there that you think that if you're a contending team and you're just searching for points, who are you going after?
And I think it's got to be one of these consistent guys. Maybe it's a Ferguson, like I said, a Fryermuth, maybe. Um, if you're competing, your options are few and far between right now. I think. Um, Rebuilding, you got a few more options like the Hawks, the Njokus, stuff like that. Um, but you just got to get some points at this point if you're contending, man. That's all you can do.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not pretty. I don't want to have to play Noah Fant, but I'm in a league where I have Mark Andrews and Noah Fant, and I'm facing that decision right now. So it's something I'm thinking about, and I'm going to roll with Mark Andrews for now. But the tight end landscape and the tight end market is not what we thought it would be so far. Hopefully, it'll get turned around by the end of the year. But that's going to do it for us. So be sure to follow us on X over at the FF Mediators. Subscribe to our YouTube at the FF Mediators. We are proud affiliates of the Face Off Sports Network. So be sure to like, subscribe, and follow all of their channels for constant fantasy football content. Be sure to catch us live every Wednesday at 8:30 Eastern, where we're going to go through your questions, buy, sell, holds, trade questions, anything you can think of. We're talking fantasy football. And then finally, we will be live at halftime of each Thursday night game over on X. We have our own space over there, so be sure to join us and ask your questions, join in the conversation, and let's talk some football. But until next time, we'll see you then.